Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Gen Z Sanctum. This is episode 2. I had hoped that my friend Nathan would be joining us for episode 2, but part of the reason why he's not joining us for this episode is the episode topic, which is podcasting. How hard is it to come up with an idea of podcasting? How much more complicated it gets when you try to add more than one host, how boring it can be with just the one host, and all the different problems that you can have that I have personally had with getting this podcast going. So strap in, because this is going to be a bit of a rant, but also maybe interesting. If you pick out the angry bits, it might be interesting. So let me paint a picture for you guys. So you and maybe a friend or two have interesting conversations, funny or fascinating or informative, that you think, maybe other people would want to listen to this, would want to hear these conversations, And you don't, maybe you do or maybe you don't like to stream on Twitch or YouTube or wherever, but maybe you want to, podcast. That sounds like a good idea. Well, let's start a podcast, you might think. So, that is probably the easiest part, is deciding to start one. Then comes, well, for me anyway, having to come up with how many people you want involved, how many hosts, either it's just you, or you and a friend, or you and several friends. Then you have to come up with topics, like what are you going to talk about, what's the whole premise of the podcast, and then you have to think of what the name is, which is sometimes the hardest bit, and then you have to set it up, find a place on on YouTube, on Spotify. Where exactly are you going to be putting your podcast on, and how exactly, what exactly your goal is for said podcast. So, let me give you a little bit of a insight into this. So, I'm currently uploading my podcasts to podcast Spotify for Podcasters is what it's called, which then can jump from there to many different podcasts: Stitcher, Public Radio, Pocket Casts, Castbox, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Overcast, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcasts is a little bit hard to figure out, granted, but so far, podcasting this so far has actually paid off well. So, or at least I think it has. So, essentially, you'll have to do a lot of thinking about what topic or topics you want to be doing a podcast about, and how exactly, if it's not just you, if you have a friend that's like, hey, I want to be the host as well, now you have to figure out how exactly you're going to get together with them. If you can see them often, then that's cool. If not, you'll have to figure out times, and if you can't see them that often, that might actually hurt your podcast, because if you're just recording on your own after promising the audience that there would be a friend joining you, people may get tired of it, like, where's the other guy? Like, this is boring if it's just you, and then they'll leave, which is the risk I'm taking right now, recording this third episode without a friend, or second or third episode without a friend, the friend that I promised y'all present. He has a professional microphone and stuff that would make this sound way more professional and so forth, but I don't see him that much. He works a full-time job, and when he's not working a full-time job, he's too tired to want to get together and set a whole thing up and do a whole thing, which I understand. When I had a full-time job, I I got that too. After having a hard day at work, I was too tired to do much of anything else as well. So I understand that. What does this mean exactly? Well, it means that either one, I won't be uploading as many podcasts as often as I would like, which the audience will lose interest if there's not as many uploads as often, or two, it'll be mostly just me, which may get boring because there's nothing, there's nobody really to discuss certain topics with, which is difficult when it's just you. But it does mean that you can upload more often if it's just you. So there's all that to think about, and then you have to think about what topics do I want to do, and which topics do I want to steer clear of? Like, what topics are too politically, have too much political tension, too much of a hot topic, so to speak. Which topics are too boring that people aren't interested in, that if I just do an episode on, people will just go and they won't be interested. So you have to think about that when doing a podcast. It's a whole, if you've got a full-time job or full-time school, it's very difficult to do this and that at the same time. So that's why I'm doing this podcast now, because I'm out of school and I don't have a full-time job as of now. So I have the time, but I have the time and the patience, but the difficult part right now is, one, finding topics that would be interesting to do, two, making sure that the setup and it sounds professional to a certain degree, something interesting that people would want to listen to, and three, getting my other friend at a moment when he's not busy to set something up and do something, which is, I think, one of the most difficult parts of this is finding my friend, the other hosts, a time that we can all get together and record stuff. Because they have one day off, pretty much one day off a week, other than Sundays, and it changes from week to week. So, and they often had a rough day at work, so they often don't want to see anybody or talk to anybody. So that's another thing altogether. And then maybe I don't know, maybe you suggest a topic to them and they think, oh, that's a boring topic, maybe we shouldn't talk about that, and so that's difficult. But something I have wanted to talk about is maybe not having an official co-host, switching the episodes up from time to time, having someone come in for one episode or a couple of episodes, and then having another guest come in once or twice, but not having an official co-host. But as this podcast was partially his idea, I think he would not approve of that. I'd probably have to talk to him about that, but essentially, I've got a lot on my mind right now when it comes to the podcast. So if you guys out there are thinking about starting a podcast, just know ahead of time that it involves a lot of thinking and a lot of worrying, and a lot of planning. So this is just a short, I suppose, little episode to keep you guys entertained while I'm waiting on a time to spring on my friend and say, hey, we need to get together and record something. So that's pretty much all I got for this episode. It's been shorter than I was expecting normal episodes to take, but also longer than I expected this topic to last. So rant over for now, and hopefully within the next couple of days or the next week, I will have an actual real episode with friends to talk to you about. So that's all for now. Be sure to tune in next time and share this podcast with your friends. I do have a goal. If I get 100 listeners on the Gen Z Sanctum on Spotify, they will actually do host-read ads, which is something. 4 listeners within the last 60 days. Or no, wait. 100 Spotify listeners within a 60-day period, and I can start maybe making some money and making this even more professional. That would be interesting. I'd probably put in timestamps to tell you when an ad is so that you can skip it if you don't like it, or maybe I won't. I'd have to check and see what that's about. But for now, that's sort of a peek behind the curtain, a look into the future of what I want to do with the podcast. And then this whole episode has been a bit of a rant about just the difficulties of starting a podcast and what difficulties I've had starting this podcast. So, rant over, and also episode over. Thanks for joining us, guys. Tune in next time.